saying you are tuned into LocalMotion here on 91.3 WVKR, independent radio, Poughkeepsie, New York. I am thrilled to be having my guest, Scott Petito, join me in a few minutes. But for now, let's start off with a track from his upcoming record. Let's take a listen to this right here, right now. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And let's take a listen to some music by Scott Petito, 91.3 WVKR. 91.3 WVKR, Independent Radio, Poughkeepsie, New York. Let's talk to Scott Petito, and he'll tell us about the track that we just heard. Let me get him on air. Scott?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, yay. It's always a good start when I don't disconnect somebody. So,
yeah,
hey.
I wondered.
Yeah.
I'm on a 7-second delay, but that's okay. No, I'm kidding.
No, I think you probably are. Knowing us, we do have that. So listen, let me do a brief introduction to the listeners here, if I may. Award-winning composer, producer, arranger, musician, and recording engineer Scott Petito has performed and recorded with countless musicians, including James Taylor, Chick Corea, Jack DeJohnette, the band, Dave Brubeck, the Brubeck Brothers, Keith Richard, just to name a few. He runs his studio, NRS Recording Studio in Catskill. He'll also be performing on May 2nd outside in Catskill as part of Jazz Outside. Scott will be releasing a solo record later this summer. With that, a warm, wholehearted welcome back to LocalMotion, Scott Petito.
Oh, it's so great to be back, Rita. Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah, of course. How could I not? I have all these recording engineers people over the last few weeks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get Scott. Wouldn't be the same without you, Scott. So
yeah, we all have a bowling team.
I would thought you'd have like a hiking club or some sort of a kind of a thing.
No, it's bowling.
Is that right? Okay, well, good. Thanks for letting the secret out. That's awesome. Tell me what we just heard. Tell me about Dabwala.
Okay, Dabwala is a song from my new, I call it the COVID record at the moment, but that won't be its final title. But basically, I made it and wrote and recorded all the songs during COVID. So most of it has been done in pieces with flying, parts in from all over the world. Actually, Anna Maria Jopek is an amazing Polish singer, a superstar in Poland, actually, an old friend of mine, and done a few records with her. So she's singing on there. Steve Gadd's playing drums.
That's just crazy. You just email Steve Gadd, hey, you want to be on my album? Sure, yeah, no problem. Okay.
Well, actually, I have a history with Steve. I grew up and spent time when I was very young watching him and Mike Maneri and a bunch of guys in Woodstock rehearse. So we have a very long history. But he's a gracious and incredible person. And Bob Minzer's on there playing, he's playing Iwi on this, but he's a saxophonist for the group The Yellow Jackets and one of the best saxophone players in the world, really. Let's see, who else is on it? Bashiri Johnson's doing some percussion. I'm playing bass and piccolo bass.
Rachel Z?
Rachel Z's playing piano.
Right.
So I'm glad you're following along.
Well, when you sent me the details, I'm like, wow, look at this. And I loved how you sent it all like that because that's the way you got to do it. So when is this album coming out?
We're hoping to have it out late summer at the moment, in time for, the holiday shopping season. You have to be a few months ahead with all of that.
Yeah, you do.
So yeah, it's going to be good, and I've had to limit myself both in the scope of the length of the songs, but also the album length because I want to do audiophile vinyl for this one.
Nice.
And
you printing CDs?
Put in a bunch of different. We'll have CDs as well, but the handwriting's on the wall. The CDs.
Stop.
Leaving our world here.
No, I'm in denial. I still don't do downloads. Yeah. I know.
Hard to find people who even have a CD player in their car anymore.
I know. Stop. Yeah. I know. I can't stand it. Oh, yeah. I'm resisting that change like you have no idea how much I'm resisting that. But yeah, okay. So
yeah, it's amazing.
So let's step back a little bit. Last time, I always loved, the history and how you got into music. You are from the Hudson Valley, born and raised here, yes?
I am.
You are. What was your first instrument?
Guitar. I like a million other people. I saw the Beatles on TV. Well, actually, I'm not even sure I saw the Beatles on TV. I think I did because I was so young at the time. But I certainly was influenced by them a few years after that, if not right at the time they appeared on Ed Sullivan. Picked up the guitar and really never put it down until I was in a band in high school and they needed a bass player. So,
what was the name of the band?
Fred's Body.
I love it. I love high school bands' names. So yeah, okay, yeah.
In fact, we keep claiming we're going to have a reunion because most of my friends are still here in the Hudson Valley. Well, guitarist now lives in Vermont, but we one of these days we are going to have a Fred's Body reunion.
I love it.
So yeah, you'll be right up front. I'm going to make sure you're sitting right up.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yep. Perfect. So guitar in high, what were you listening to besides the Beatles in high school? The regular, I think you and I are probably close to the same age, like the Led Zeppelin, the rock kind of stuff, or what were you listening to?
All of that. I mean, but actually by the time I got to high school, I was already starting to lean towards jazz. I would say my late grade school, I mean, I went to Catholic school, so our high school starts at grade 9. So somewhere around the 8th grade, I had my second epiphany, which after the Beatles was the Mahavishnu Orchestra, which is John McLaughlin's group. And that kind of set me off on another path. And in a way, they were even more my Beatles than the Beatles were, because they led me to other, electronic jazz and experimental music, but also to traditional jazz, John Coltrane, Miles Davis. So, and then eventually I wound up going to Berkeley and getting a degree in jazz composition and arranging. So I spent a lot of time in the jazz world.
Did you take lessons when you were in high school?
No, I was self-taught.
Wow.
I was self-taught all the way through. And in fact, the year before I went to Berkeley, I've got to remember, back in those days, you couldn't be a guitarist, or at that point I was mostly an electric bassist. I did play some upright, but it wasn't my first instrument for sure. Guitarists weren't allowed in music schools. Really, there were only about 3 schools in America that had a program for guitar.
Really?
There was a couple of classical guitar programs, but for the most part, there was no such thing as a jazz program. So there was Berkeley, the University of Miami, North Texas State, those 3 for sure. There might have been a couple of others, but a lot of great people came out of them. Pat Metheny and Jocko and all these people came out of University of Miami. Mark Egan, North Texas State has some amazing arrangers, and other Lau Mays. So a lot of very influential jazz musicians and instrumentalists came out of those schools, and obviously Berkeley.
Right. You studied composition and arranging at Berkeley, not like...
Yeah. I was a bass player too, obviously, and being a bass player at Berkeley was really good for me, because had I gone in as a guitarist, we had when I was there, the student population was about 1,500 guitarists and 200 bass players.
There you go.
So I immediately got thrown into the fan, so to speak. I had to, get in with people who were way beyond my ability to play, and hopefully keep up with them. Whereas had I been playing the guitar, there was a longer road to climb.
Right.
But still, I'm one of the people who appreciates and still loves my Berkeley experience, and I still have friends there who teach and.
Were you playing out in the clubs there?
A bit. After a year or so of being there, I started doing more local playing and more studio work, and that's how I got into the studios.
I was just going to go there with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I got some gigs doing jingles and the like around town, and whatever somebody needed recorded. And I found that I was more interested in what was going on on the other side of the glass than I was on my side, because for the most part, bass players often don't see a lot of interesting music to read on a session. It's a lot of chord changes, maybe 1 or 2 little lines. So while everybody else is struggling with what they're doing, you're sort of okay. I'm good. Let's just see what else is going on. So I'm watching everybody else work, and that's what kind of got me interested in the production side, in the recording side, and integrating the two. And watching, and most of the sessions I was lucky, because usually the conductor or the producer of the session was also a really excellent musician. So that right away became like a criteria for me. It's like, oh yeah, if you're a really good musician, you should be able to do this. That was not the norm at the time. There were really very defined lines between the engineer, who may or may not have been a musician, and the musical people out in the room who were recording. And so that, this has become really something since the home studio era, where the players are as adept at recording as the engineers of the past might have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's how I wound up there. Oh, with that caveat, I still have immense respect for the older engineers, Al Schmidt and all these guys who are they knew how to make records, and there's a magic to what they did and still do. The ones who are with us, that very few of us who are doing this today actually can do. And it just has to do with a lineage and understanding of a lot of things that came before and after. But yeah, I mean, there's people making wonderful music now. In fact, it's never been easier to make a record.
Yeah. I was going to say it must have been harder back then, right? With
way harder. Not just because of the equipment they used, but all sorts of things. I mean, many times they had to build their own. If they needed something, they had to build it. If I need a compressor, then I got to build it. I got to figure out how it works. So there was a lot more science and engineering from that perspective in engineering, which is really where the term came from. I rarely call myself an engineer. I'm a sound mixer, a recordist. Engineer kind of implies a very different thing in my mind. But yeah, it's whatever works. I'm good with it.
Yeah. And after Berkeley, is that when you became part of the Fugs?
Not very long after, actually, strangely enough, which is
that was graduate school for you?
Other direction as you could go. Well, the interesting thing was I grew up loving Frank Zappa, and my cousins had turned me on to the Fugs when I was very, very young. In fact, they actually scared me showing me the cover of the first Fugs album. So I never forgot it. It's sort of emblazoned in my mind, and I think of Allen Ginsberg being there and in the photos with them, and just an amazing thing. And then all of a sudden to be playing with them.
How'd you get the gig?
Well, strangely enough, I got it through Robbie Dupree.
Really?
Yeah. He was a good friend of Ed Sanders, and I came back from Berkeley, and they needed a bass player because they were going to reform the band, and this was like 1984, to do some shows and also to start writing an opera called Star Piece. It was sort of a counter to Ronald Reagan's Star Wars. So that's what we wound up doing, and I sent them whatever I had, and I remember playing Bach cello suites with a fuzz pedal and things like that, and going, well, maybe they'll like this. And the next thing I know, we're making a record, and I think we made that first record in like 4 days.
Wow.
The band just really gelled, and now we're like one of the oldest rock bands in the history of rock music.
Yeah. What do you got going on? Any gigs going to come up for the Fugs?
Well, we just before the pandemic, we had done some shows at Joe's Pub, and we were talking about going to Europe and Japan. Then the pandemic hit. We were in the process of getting ready to do a new record, our Fugs final album, Volume 3. We've already done 2 final albums. Which if you knew us makes total sense. So we will get back on the trail, but Ed is up there, and Thule left us a few years ago, so it's mostly the younger guys who we're up there. So.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, we will do more. I don't think you can kill this band. So
no, I think not.
Yeah.
Man, I watched some of those videos, Scott, on YouTube. The greatest videos I may have ever seen of a band. Oh my God.
Yeah, the early ones are really pretty amazing. There's more of those up on YouTube. Ed seems to have more control over the new stuff that he's saving for his papers at Stanford University or something. Turns everything over.
Right.
It was a great experience, and it led me down a path with poets and artists I never would have otherwise worked with, like Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs and Gregory Corso, who all loved and also performed musically in their poetry. So that was really great, and all the other people, like even Patti Smith is another one. It was very, I would call them friends of the band, basically. Philip Glass, just a real cross section of the culture of particularly the Lower East Side of New York. So it's pretty great.
Did you ever live in the city, or after Berkeley, did you come back to the Hudson Valley?
I did go to the city for a very brief period of time. The early 80s, after I left Berkeley, were not the best years to be in New York.
Right.
It was filthy. There were cabaret laws, all kinds of things. So there was more happening upstate, believe it or not, because we had Bearsville Studios. We had a number of people living in this area who were working and were national touring acts. So it just made sort of sense to go home and reassess. And once I did, I realized, well, this is not a bad place to make music.
Right.
And or certainly be a great home base, and it still is to many musicians.
And more coming all the time.
All the time.
All the time. Talk to me about the start of NRS.
All right. Well, NRS doesn't mean anything anymore. Nasty right side sibilance, not really a studio. You pretty make up whatever words you want. But it was partners I had in the mid to late '80s.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a woman named Robin. Who her name spelled backwards was Nybor, so it was technically Nybor Recording Studio. And but we never really called it that, so we called it NRS. And by the time I took over, I'd already made about 400 albums. So I'm like, I want to change the name, but I don't know. It's on so many records now, and I should just leave it. But in the back of my mind, I actually call it Pet Sounds. So yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, because I think I've done. I know it's over 1,200 now. I kind of lost count after we hit over 1,000.
1,200 albums recorded at your studio. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. And not always every bit of the record, but especially in recent years we've had more of that. But early on, I was really cranking, and I still do.
Do you have
during the pandemic?
Do you have like a book when these musicians come in that they all sign it?
We do. We have a birthday book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they find their birthday, and then they sign the page, and it's kind of amazing when somebody comes in and the book it has the birthdays of musicians in it. And there are several people in this book whose names are printed on those pages.
No
So they're
way.
already in the book, and then they sign next to it.
And they autograph it right there for you. Oh,
yeah, Beth actually started that, so that was a great idea that she had, and we forget to pull it out every time. We go, the birthday book, shoot.
Yeah.
But luckily enough, people come around that we usually grab them at some point.
Do you remember the first session you oversaw?
Yeah, I mean, early on, actually, one of the first ones was actually with John Hall, believe it or not.
Uh-huh.
John wanted to do demos. At that time, there were demos for what would have been the first John Hall band album. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he doesn't even, he might remember, but I doubt it. It was a big deal for me because those guys were very influential on me in Orleans, and Orleans had just broken up around this time. I had a smaller studio set up and was just changing over to the larger format. We were kind of like the first studio that wasn't a mega studio to go with a 24-track, a 2-inch machine, the whole bit. So it was kind of I'm sort of, in a way, one of the original kind of project studio people out there. Mm-hmm. So this was the beginnings of that. So John was the first, and he actually played all the instruments on that particular project. And then that became the precursor for when they went in to do the full album. So that was great. I learned a lot. He was a master studio musician himself. So I've learned from everybody, but he's certainly one of the greats.
Yeah, and you're known. I mean, I know you as jazz, heavily recording jazz musicians. But was that always the case with you, or no?
No. In fact, after I left Berkeley, I kind of moved away from jazz. I played in a few jazz ensembles for a while, some fusion mostly because that was, I was an electric bassist, so there was more going on in that world, some funk, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea kind of things. But my jazz world sort of flipped back around after the whole singer-songwriter movement, which that's when I was working with Livingston Taylor and James Taylor and Kate Taylor and every other Taylor you could possibly think of, and the offshoots thereof, and Pete Seeger, and then very deep into the really hardcore blues musicians like Taj Mahal, then the band was always an omnipresent in my life because we were always working with someone in the band.
Right.
And at one point, my studio was set up in two locations, one in Hurley and one at Levon's.
Wow.
And in fact, I was getting kind of crazy with it, and that's when I decided to build the studio I have here. And that was about when Rick Danko passed away. I finally said, okay, I think I'm done with the barn, and I'm ready to come back over here. But that was a great experience too. I mean, it was crazy. You know, those were really nutty, real rock and roll days.
Yeah. I bet. I bet there's a book you can write just about that. Is that when you had a work with Keith Richards when he had his time at the barn?
Yeah, we had Keith come. There were lots of guests came. At one point, you know, Bruce Hornsby had come up. Los Lobos. Most people wanted to try and work with the band, writing songs and material. It wasn't always easy because the guys, you know, they were kind of scattered all over the place. Mm-hmm. I love them all, but you know, it was not always an easy time, and a lot of it was just waiting. Right. Let's wait and see what happens.
Right.
But some great stuff came out of those years, and in fact, some of the gigs where, you know, guest artists would come in, or they would hire members of the band like the Hollies or somebody like that. Those were some of the really great sessions, or the Keith session, which was with Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana from Elvis Presley's band.
Wow.
So, and the stories there were insane because Scotty was telling stories about Elvis, you know, on top of his Cadillac in the car lot, you know, telling jokes when he was completely an unknown, you know, at gigs, you know, and that they played the car lots on Sunday afternoon. So yeah, those stories are priceless, and they flow off of them, and yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy. But, wow.
Yeah.
And then the jazz started with you. I would be remiss not to say, if you would talk a few minutes about Chick Corea.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Chick's always been an idol of mine. I first met him in 1979. I was quite young. I think I might have been my first year at Berkeley, and I came back home, and there was the Creative Music Studio, which was Carl Berger's school here in Woodstock, was really hopping at the time, and they had a great concert, and one of the headliners was Chick, Jack DeChanette, Miroslav Vitous, Anthony Braxton, and Pat Metheny.
Man,
all playing together. Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. In fact, it's kind of an iconic concert that some of the bits and pieces are out on the internet. And I went backstage because I knew Jack at the time because I met him when I was quite young as well. But Chick was coming off stage, and I got to say hello. I just got to meet Chick Corea. He's an idol, and Chick immediately just. Like he greeted me as if he'd known me for 10 years, and he immediately started talking about Bartok and saying, "Man, you got to get into the Bartok string quartets." I didn't even. Yeah, I'm just saying basically, "Hi there, how are you doing?" and he's off on a tangent about, you know, what he's been working on and what he's excited about, and that really stayed with me for years. And then when I met Chick again, well, we worked together on a project, and then I actually wound up doing 3 different projects with him. The first one was a Roy Haynes project that Doug Ewell had set up, and that was fantastic. But the thing I really love about Chick was his joy of playing, and the only other person I knew who had similar joy was Dave Brubeck, who I also worked with.
Yeah. And
still do, actually, even though he's gone. I'm working on his, archival music.
Right.
But Chick and Dave had this joy of music that, like, they would be listening to playbacks, and it was as if they were listening to something that they never heard before. And it was like, wow, you know, and it was just really, really connected in a way that was, to me, I go, wow, this is how we should be as musicians. Mm-hmm. We should have this almost childlike joyfulness about the music we're hearing and playing. So that's really the greatest thing to me with Chick. I mean, you know, you can say millions of things about what he did and his innovations and everything else, but to experience that joy and that level of skill combined together with no lack of communication. His whole thing is about just being able to communicate with people through his music.
Right.
That's priceless stuff. You can't learn that in school.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, well, you are so lucky to have met him and worked with him, and
and I feel fortunate because a lot of these guys, they, for whatever reason, they recognize that the kid's got something going on or something, and they sort of bounce things off of me, and we work together, and it's like, wow, I sometimes I'll go home and I go, wow, they really valued my opinion on that, or and it's not about ego or anything, but it's like, wow, that really makes you feel like, okay, all that work you put in is paying off.
It's paying off. Yeah. And you have a very long relationship with Jack DeJohnette as well.
Yeah. It goes back for years because, since I grew up around here, I met him early and also through the Creative Music Studio. And of course, everybody's interconnected, and Dave Holland, the bassist, I've had about 2/3 of Miles Davis's Bitches Brew band in the studio in the last, 5 or 6 years alone.
Wow.
Lenny White's been here. I mean, it's kind of amazing. I go, except if Miles was here, we could have.
I saw Lenny White play with Pete Levin and his group Jump, that release. I think you probably recorded that up there. My mouth freaking dropped. He was at Rosendale Cafe, and I don't think I'd ever heard a drummer like him before. I was just like, who is this guy? He was.
Again, he's one of the greats.
Yeah.
And, I'm very lucky with drummers. My new record is, like I said, Steve Gadd, has Omar Hakim, Peter Erskine, who's another old friend and dear friend, who's just one of the great players, and Simon Phillips, another old friend of mine, and we've actually done some shows together.
Oh, I remember a show you guys did at Bearsville Theater years back.
Yeah, I wish we could have done more of those around here, but we never really got too many of them together, which was unfortunate.
Everybody was good. Now, let's also talk about what you do here in the Hudson Valley. You come up with these killer tribute shows. You got anything in the works there?
We do. In fact, I just confirmed this afternoon that we'll be at the Bearsville Theater on July 9th and 10th, because we're waiting to see, maybe we'll have more of an influx of people allowed in the building. Right now, I think it's set at 100, and we'll be doing the complete Let It Be.
Oh my God!
Yeah, we've done the White Album in its entirety, and we've done Abbey Road. Let It Be is actually a little easier in some ways, but it's a great record, and it's a good time for it because Peter Jackson has reworked all of the footage from the original Let It Be movie, of which they apparently had many, many, many hours of footage, and they're releasing a major motion picture, Let It Be, but I think they're retitling it Get Back, because that was the name of those original sessions.
Right.
And the idea was the Beatles wanted to get back to the way they made records in the old days and just, sat around and played them down and sang and did the whole bit, and they weren't overproduced, which is strange because they brought in Phil Spector, who overproduced the crap out of it.
Right. No, that's a good one. So who's playing with you on July 9th and 10th?
Well, that will be, for sure, Jeff Murcell, who also was in Mercury Rev and has done our other Beatles shows with us. Danny Bloom, who you know from Radio Land.
Yeah.
Among other places. Tyler Wood, who's a wonderful keyboardist and also another engineer you should probably put on your show one of these days, and producer. Let's see, who else? Joey Eppert, of course.
Yeah.
Adam Widoff, myself, and we have a special guest, but before I say that, I want to confirm
100%. Yeah.
They are in, but it's gonna be good. So it's a little more stripped down band, but it's a more stripped down album.
Yeah.
And we'll add some other things in as well. If I can convince them, I want to do. It's been my life's ambition to play. My name, look up the number. So I've just got to convince everybody else to do it. So.
Oh man,
we'll see if it happens.
Good stuff. Those tribute shows you have put on in the past are just gorgeous.
Well, I never called them tributes because to me, it's interesting because I've spent most of my life, and actually most of the guys who and women who have done this with us, because we've done Joni and we've done a number of things. I do traffic as well. We'll be at the Falcon doing Paper Sun, which is our traffic show in June.
Nice.
But I don't have all the info for that. But anyway, I didn't think of them as tributes originally. I just thought like, oh wow, I really want to get into these albums and like just
revisit
them.
Yeah.
And the thing is once you do that, you realize it is a little bit like Beethoven or Mozart or Bach in that, you got to kind of play these. You can bring your personality to it, but these parts, you really got to do them. So that's really been it. It's just the dedication of everyone to really do the best job at presenting the music as it was, but not be a copy. We still try and be who we are.
Yeah, exactly. Make it your own. But yeah.
So you've seen them, so you know what I mean. But the idea we're never going to dress up like the Beatles or anything like that.
Oh, come on, Scott. Come on.
Well, we might.
Okay. All right. If there's a possibility of hope there with that one.
Yeah.
And the first show that I know of that you have is coming up May 2nd, Sunday, May 2nd in Catskill from 2 to 5. Tell us.
All right. That is my friend Tom Bellino is putting on a mini jazz fest at the B.D. Powers home, which is it's just an incredible house that overlooks the Hudson River right by the Rip Van Winkle Bridge. I often go there. I live in Catskill, so I often go there in the morning and have my coffee, and you'll see my pictures on Instagram of the sun coming up and everything, and it's really beautiful. So it'll be outside in the tent. There's 2 bands. I'll be there with Rachel, my great friend and just one of the best musicians in the world, Rachel Z. Jay Collins is going to be playing sax with us. Ben Porowski and myself, and then there's a sextet that if I start naming everybody, I'm going to forget people. I'm going to feel bad. So,
no, you're not. I've got them all written down as well.
All right, good.
So Gary,
Somalian,
and Ralph.
Baritone sax. Ralph Lamont, right?
Yes,
He's one of the guys I don't know as well. Mike Benedict is the drummer. John Menigan's playing bass.
Mike D'Amico,
of course.
Yep.
Mike and I went to Berkeley together. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, we lived together. Now, there's some stories someday.
Oh, come on. I want to hear. Give me something here. That's awesome.
No. I have to clear them with Mike first.
Gosh. Oh my gosh. I recently had a Chuck Lamb on. Mike D'Amico, I still have not had on the show. He's like, I don't know if I've done enough. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Come on, Mike D'Amico. I got to have him on the show.
Mike and I both also played in Chuck's original fusion band called Dry Jack, which I did right after I got out of Berkeley and right before the Fugs. Great band. We had some really great records and stuff, and wonderful players. So we have a little bit of a history.
Oh, I did not know that. You and Mike roomies at Berkeley, man. That's really cool. Great stuff that you have coming up. Scott, you are also, of course, on Facebook, ScottPetitoProductions.com. When I first started the show, I mentioned a handful of people. I literally could talk to you for an hour, and I don't think we will have mentioned every musician you've played with. So if listeners are interested, I highly recommend you go check out the website, ScottPetitoProductions.com. How's this past year been? It seems like people in your field, at least the last 3 weeks, have been extremely busy.
I never really wasn't busy because I do a lot of... When I'm not doing anything that's completely live, I do a lot of mixing for bands all over. So I started out mixing a live jazz album, and then I went right into the Dave Brubeck alternate timeout record, which was a lot of work and a lot of archaeology, and involved the Sony Vault, which did shut down on us when that was kind of complex. But and then I also wound up mixing bands from a couple of records from Argentina. I have a singer-songwriter in Italy that I'm still working with. So and we managed to get 2 film scores in somehow. I don't know, but but for the most part, we've been really careful, and we have had some people in. But for most of the year, I've had projects that have been sustaining us and trying to keep people working and the best we can.
The best we can.
Yeah, Joe Lewis Walker, we finished the new record.
Oh, I had probably one of the best, I don't know the man, and I had him on my show.
Oh, yeah.
It was so easy to talk to him. I feel like he was a longtime friend. That's how nice. I had such a good time. I look forward to seeing him play soon at the Falcon. He's got some new music out too with you.
Yeah, and we tracked most of it, but he still had some vocals to do, and we had some guitar overdubs and other things, and so we had to finish it up. So we did when things were safe and we were feeling good about it. Laura Hope was really probably the last band I had in right before we locked down.
She just mailed me the CD. How cool is that CD?
I heard you played it. Yeah.
Huh.
Say again, I'm sorry?
The CD, the cover is like so cool. You see why I'm old school, Scott? Yeah. Like if I saw this thing on a download, I wouldn't know anything about it. And I know it was recorded at your place. Why? Because it says so on the inside cover, and of course she had posted about it as well. But just what a fun CD.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And her drummer, Jeremy, and his partner, Mike, have a group called Blue Museum, who I've been working with now for a few months. Also, we're all masked and socially distanced, but we tracked a rather complex kind of alternative rock record that I'm hoping to have mixed and ready by also sometime probably midsummer or so. We'll be ready to put that out. They probably know more about that schedule than I do at the moment, but really great. And then a lot of things with Larry Grenadier, the great bassist from town, and with different people that, Rebecca Martin, and
they're fantastic. The two of them. Yeah.
They're fantastic. We not to skirt anything. We try to be really safe, especially during the summer months, and we were more active. And then when it got a little bit dicier, we had to be inside. We did more things remotely or one at a time, or however we just did whatever we had to do. Right.
Whatever you have to do to keep it safe.
Yeah, and everybody else is doing the same thing, really.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's all you can do. I want to play some of your music. I'm going to formally invite you back as soon as you release your solo work, so we can play more of that and then talk again later this year, because we haven't even scratched the surface of a lot of things. But I look forward to your upcoming shows at Bearsville and the Falcon and Scott Petito. We're so lucky to have you here in the Hudson Valley. Thank you for gifting the world with your talents and your beautiful music, and you are one hell of a bass player. We haven't even talked about your musicianship and all those beautiful basses you own. And man, no, you got a good thing going on, Scott. I wish you the continued success, good health, love to Leslie. A big hello, of course, to Beth, who is your assistant in the studio. You can't do it without her. So, yeah, absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you, Rita. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
It's always a pleasure.
It's so much fun talking to you.
Next time you have all four of us on at once.
Oh my God, could you imagine? Hey, you guys could all figure it out. As long as you guys get on one phone line together and then call me, I could do it. So,
well, you remember when Jerry and I were on, we took over the show.
I just kind of sat back, and that was in person. I think I almost peed my pants. I laughed so hard with the two of you. It was a riot having you guys on. So, I'd love to do that with the four of you, and just kind of, I don't even think I'd have to say much and just let you guys go at it, because what a great idea. Let's plan that.
Yeah.
Now I just have to get the four of you on one day schedule. Imagine that.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to play some of your music, and I'm going to say thank you for your time. And folks, ScottPetitoProductions.com. I will talk with you soon. And Scott, I do hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you will.
All right, awesome. Yeah, thank you, Scott. Take care. Be safe. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned into Local Motion here on 91.3 WVKR. I'm your host, Rita Ryan. Just spent some great time talking with Scott Petito of NRS Recording Studios. Let's take a listen to this. This is the alternate Take 5, Dave Brubeck Quartet, all recorded at Scott's studio. Let's take a listen. 91.3 WVKR. Wow. 91.3 WVKR, Independent Radio, Poughkeepsie, New York. I forgot to tell Scott this story, but what we just heard was the alternate Take 5 from the Dave Brubeck Quartet, the restoration, editing, and mixing by my guest today, Scott Petito, from the original 1959 masters. And this is a previously unheard version of the song that led the first million-selling jazz record. Wow. Thank you for sending that, Scott. And what I didn't tell you is I got turned on to jazz in my 20s. And unbeknownst to me, I wound up going to the Bardavon in Poughkeepsie. And I saw my first jazz concert, and it blew me away. And it was Dave Brubeck. So, great memories there. That was some really good stuff. I meant to mention that to Scott, but I didn't. And maybe he's listening, maybe he's not. But I thank Scott Petito for his time today. Check out his website, scottpetitoproductions.com. Also, Facebook, Scott Petito, recording engineer extraordinaire, has worked. Like he said, did 1,200 albums thus far, and it's not over yet. If you missed part of this interview with Scott, it is recorded and will upload it later on the LocalMotion Rita Ryan Facebook page as well as YouTube. And it's a podcast. If you do streaming, you can follow LocalMotion on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you may get your podcasts. So I'm going to go out with a couple of more tracks of Scott's that he sent me. This last one is from the Fugs, and check them out if you haven't already, the Fugs on YouTube. What a group. And next week's guest will be the owner of Colony in Woodstock, Neil Howard. And in 2 weeks, I'll be joined by the drummer from the Spin Doctors, Aaron Comis. And in 3 weeks, Pete Levin will be back on the show. So lots of great things happening. And thanks everybody so much for tuning in. So much fun talking with Scott. It always is. Support live music, enjoy live music. It's coming back, and check out live streams, and concerts are coming back slowly but surely. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I will be back next Wednesday, which is the typical time slot here from 4 to 6 p.m. And again, give us a like on Facebook under LocalMotion, and please follow on YouTube under LocalMotion as well. Let's take a listen to a track by the Fugs. This is titled Be Free. And here we go. Until next week, I wish you all peace.
Roll up your walls. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Time to fold it up. Come on, people, let's go. Hold on to your brothers and your sisters. We're all folks now. We're all folks now. What's gone? Democracy, said William Barr.